In 1536, a 16-year-old boy made a decision that would separate him from everyone he loved for the rest of his life. Takeda Shingen was the heir to a powerful samurai clan in northern Japan. His father, Takeda Nobutora, ruled their domain with traditional methods, alliances through marriage, diplomacy, and careful risk management. But young Shingen saw a different path. He studied warfare obsessively. He trained when others rested. He drilled his soldiers harder than any other clan. He refused social gatherings to focus on military strategy. His father thought he was wasting his youth. His siblings thought he was arrogant. His childhood friends stopped inviting him to celebrations because he always declined. At 16, Shingen made his choice clear. He would exile his own father and take control of the clan to implement the disciplined military system he'd been planning. His family called him a traitor. His friends abandoned him. His father's loyalists tried to assassinate him. For the next 5 years, Takeda Shingen ate alone, slept alone, and made every decision alone. But by age 21, he commanded the most disciplined army in Japan. By 30, he controlled 5 provinces. By 40, he was recognized as one of the greatest military minds in Japanese history. And he remained fundamentally alone, not because he couldn't form relationships, but because the level of discipline required to become great creates a gap between you and everyone else that can never be fully bridged. His contemporaries described him as the man who chose victory over companionship, not because he hated people, but because the path to mastery is inherently isolating, and most people will never understand why you're walking it. This video will show you why real discipline, the kind that actually transforms you, makes you lonely first, and only makes you free after you've survived that loneliness. Because loneliness isn't a side effect, it's a requirement. Let's begin. Let me show you exactly why discipline separates you from everyone around you, and why that separation is inevitable. In 1548, Takeda Shingen implemented a training system for his army that was considered insane by other clans. Every soldier trained 6 hours per day. No exceptions. 6 soldiers trained. Injured soldiers trained modified drills. Even during peacetime, the training never stopped. Every other clan in Japan trained their soldiers maybe 2 hours per day, 3 days per week. Shingen's approach was considered wasteful, excessive, and cruel. His own officers questioned him. "Lord, our men are exhausted. Their families complain they never see them. Other clans mock us for overtraining. Why do we do this?" Shingen's response was simple. "When battle comes, our men will perform at their worst under extreme stress. Everyone else will collapse below their worst. That's the difference." But here's what that philosophy cost him. His officers thought he was obsessed. His soldiers' families resented him. Neighboring clans thought he was compensating for weakness with excessive drilling. Even his own advisors suggested he was damaging morale. Takeda Shingen was right. His disciplined army won battle after battle against larger forces, but being right didn't make him less isolated. This is the problem nobody tells you about discipline. When you commit to a standard that's higher than what everyone around you accepts, you automatically separate yourself from them, not by choice, by necessity. Let me show you why this separation is structural, not social. Discipline requires time. Massive amounts of time dedicated to practice, study, training, or work that others spend on leisure and socializing. Takeda Shingen spent 4 hours every morning studying military texts and planning strategy. While his peers were socializing at court, drinking, building political alliances through friendship, Shingen was alone with maps and historical battle records. That wasn't antisocial behavior. That was time allocation. He had the same 24 hours as everyone else. He chose to spend his time differently. The result, he missed every social gathering, every celebration, every informal meeting where relationships were built through casual interaction. Over time, this creates literal physical separation. You're not at the places where social bonds form because you're somewhere else doing the work. When your standards are higher than the group's standards, conversations become difficult. Takeda Shingen's officers would report, "Lord, the men completed today's training." Shingen would respond, "What was their accuracy rate? What was their formation time? How many errors occurred?" His officers weren't lazy, they just didn't think those details mattered. Shingen did. This created psychological distance. His officers started to feel that nothing they did was good enough, not because Shingen was cruel, but because his standards were genuinely higher than theirs. Over time, people stop trying to meet your standards and start resenting them instead. Discipline requires sacrificing things that most people consider non-negotiable: comfort, leisure, immediate pleasure, social approval. When Takeda Shingen was 23, his closest childhood friend, a man named Itagaki Nobukata, confronted him. "You've become someone I don't recognize. You never relax. You never celebrate victories. You're always preparing for the next battle. When will you allow yourself to live?" Shingen responded. "I am living. This is what living means to me." Itagaki couldn't understand that. To him, Shingen's life looked like self-imposed suffering. To Shingen, it was the purpose. That gap in understanding is unbridgeable. You can't explain to someone why you willingly do what they consider torture. They'll either think you're lying about enjoying it, or they'll think something is wrong with you. Either way, they can't relate. This is the problem. Real discipline doesn't just require effort. It requires a fundamentally different relationship with effort than most people have. And that different relationship makes you incomprehensible to everyone who doesn't share it. Now let me show you why loneliness isn't a problem to solve. It's actually confirmation that you're doing something most people can't or won't do. In 1561, Takeda Shingen faced his greatest rival, Uesugi Kenshin, at the Battle of Kawanakajima. They had fought 4 times before at the same location, all stalemates. Before the 5th battle, Shingen's generals held a council. They debated strategy for hours. Should they attack, defend, maneuver, wait? Historical records show that Shingen sat silently through the entire debate. He listened to every perspective. Then he dismissed everyone from the room and spent the night alone, making his decision. The next morning, he announced his strategy. It was risky. It contradicted what most of his generals recommended, but it was his decision, made alone, based on calculations they didn't understand. The battle was brutal. Over 4,000 casualties on both sides. But Shingen's forces held their position. His strategy worked. After the battle, one of his generals asked him, "Lord, why did you not discuss your strategy with us before deciding?" Shingen's answer reveals the secret. "I listen to all counsel, but I decide alone, because the responsibility is mine alone, and responsibility that can be shared is responsibility that will be avoided." This is the secret that transforms loneliness from a burden into a tool. Let me break that down. When you're truly disciplined, you stop waiting for external motivation. You stop needing permission. You stop requiring validation. You wake up and do the work, whether anyone is watching or not, whether anyone approves or not, whether anyone understands or not. That self-sufficiency is power. But it's also isolating, because most people don't operate that way. Most people need external accountability, someone checking on them, social motivation, working out with friends, studying in groups, regular validation, praise, recognition, encouragement. When you stop needing those things, you stop connecting with people through those mechanisms. Takeda Shingen didn't need his soldiers to understand his strategy. He didn't need his generals to approve his decisions. He didn't need recognition from other clans. He needed to win. And winning required a level of focused discipline that was incompatible with the social dynamics that most people use to feel connected. Here's the framework that makes this clear. High discipline, low external dependence. Fewer social connection points, increased loneliness. But also, high discipline, high capability, more freedom, greater long-term satisfaction. You can't have both high social integration and high discipline simultaneously, because social integration requires conformity to group norms, and discipline requires commitment to standards above group norms. Takeda Shingen chose discipline. He became one of the most powerful warlords in Japan. But he ate most of his meals alone for 30 years. That wasn't a failure. That was the trade. And here's what nobody tells you. The loneliness becomes bearable once you understand it's not punishment. It's proof. Proof that you're doing something most people won't do. Proof that you're operating at a level most people will never reach. Proof that you've chosen a harder path that leads somewhere worth going. The loneliness stops feeling like isolation and starts feeling like clarity. So how do you actually survive this? How do you maintain discipline through years of loneliness without breaking, without giving up, without compromising back toward mediocrity just to feel connected again? Takeda Shingen had a specific method. Let me show you the 3 practices he used to maintain his discipline without being destroyed by isolation. Most people experience loneliness as something that happens to them, an unwanted side effect of their choices. Takeda Shingen did the opposite. He made loneliness intentional and scheduled. Every morning before dawn, Shingen would spend 2 hours in complete solitude. No advisors, no guards, no servants, just him, alone, in a small room in his castle. He called this practice Dokusho, solitary reflection. During this time he would review the previous day's decisions, plan the day's priorities, study military texts, meditate on strategic problems. This wasn't isolation forced on him by his discipline. This was isolation he chose deliberately as part of his discipline. Why does this matter? Because when loneliness is something that happens to you, it feels like deprivation. When loneliness is something you choose, it feels like power. Takeda Shingen's 2 hours of solitude weren't lonely because everyone had abandoned him. They were solitary because he had decided that solitude was necessary for the level of thinking his position required. That mental reframe changes everything. Modern application. If your discipline is making you lonely, if friends stop calling, if family doesn't understand your choices, if you spend weekends alone while everyone else socializes, make that loneliness intentional. Schedule your solitude. Block out specific times for solitary work, study, or training. Make it a practice, not a consequence. When someone asks, "Why are you always alone?" you can say, "I schedule 2 hours of solitary work every morning instead of Nobody wants to hang out with me anymore. One is pathetic, the other is powerful. Both describe the same physical reality, but the mental framing is completely different. Takeda Shingen was lonely in the sense that he had few close relationships, but the relationships he did maintain were extremely deep. He had one close advisor, Yamamoto Kansuke, who understood his strategic thinking. They would spend hours discussing military theory. Kansuke was one of the only people who could challenge Shingen's ideas without being dismissed. When Kansuke died in battle in 1561, historical records show that Shingen didn't speak for 3 days. He had lost the one person who truly understood him. But here's what matters. Shingen had chosen quality over quantity. He didn't try to maintain dozens of shallow friendships. He didn't attend social gatherings to network. He didn't build a large circle of acquaintances. He had one person who deeply understood him, and that one connection was more valuable than 100 superficial relationships. This is the second practice. Accept that discipline reduces the quantity of your relationships, but it can increase the quality of the few that remain. Modern application: you don't need many friends. You need 1 or 2 people who understand why you do what you do, who share your standards, or at least respect them. Stop trying to maintain friendships that require you to compromise your discipline. Stop attending social events that drain time from your priorities. Find the 1 or 2 people who get it. Invest deeply in those relationships. Let the rest fall away without guilt. This is the hardest practice and the most important. For 20 years, other clans mocked Takeda Shingen's excessive training regimen. They thought he was wasting resources, damaging morale, overcompensating for something. Then, in battle after battle, his forces consistently defeated larger armies. By age 40, nobody was mocking him anymore. They were copying him. But Shingen had to endure 2 decades of mockery before he received any external validation that his approach was correct. That's delayed validation, and it's a requirement for anyone pursuing discipline above social norms. You will spend years being misunderstood, years being criticized, years watching other people get recognition and reward while you're still grinding in obscurity. If you need immediate validation, you'll break. You'll compromise. You'll return to average standards just to stop feeling like an outlier. Takeda Shingen's practice was simple. He stopped measuring his progress by social approval and started measuring it by objective capability. Not, do people respect me? But, can my army defeat larger forces? Not, do my peers understand my choices, but am I achieving the outcomes I set out to achieve? Modern application: create objective measures of progress that have nothing to do with social approval. If you're disciplined about fitness, track strength gains, body composition, athletic performance, not Instagram likes. If you're disciplined about learning, track books read, skills acquired, problems solved, not whether people are impressed. If you're disciplined about business, track revenue, customers, systems built, not whether family understands your work hours. Delayed validation means the results will eventually speak for themselves, but eventually might be years away. You have to be okay with that. Now let me show you how to actually train yourself to tolerate the loneliness that comes with discipline. Because tolerance isn't natural. Your brain is wired to fear social isolation. You have to systematically desensitize yourself to that fear. Takeda Shingen didn't start off comfortable with loneliness. Historical records from his early 20s show he struggled with it significantly. After exiling his father and taking control of the clan at 16, Shingen experienced what his personal writings describe as kokoro no kizu, wounds of the heart. He wrote, "The silence of my chambers feels heavier than armor. I wonder if I have chosen correctly." But over the next 5 years, he trained himself to not just tolerate loneliness, but to prefer it for certain activities. Here's how he did it. Takeda Shingen didn't immediately isolate himself completely. He gradually increased his time alone. Year 1, age 16-17. He would attend social gatherings but leave early. He'd participate in celebrations, but only for an hour. Year 2, age 17-18, he started declining non-essential social invitations, only attending events that served strategic purposes. Year 3, age 18-19, he stopped attending any social events unless they directly involved military strategy or political alliances. Year 4, age 19-20, he implemented his morning solitude practice, 2 hours alone every day. Year 5, age 20-21, he began eating meals alone, studying alone, and making all major decisions in complete isolation. This gradual approach allowed his nervous system to adapt. He built tolerance slowly, instead of shocking himself with sudden, complete isolation. Modern application: if discipline is making you lonely, don't fight it, but don't embrace it all at once either. Gradually increase your tolerance. Month 1. Spend 1 weekend alone working on your priorities. Month 2. Decline 1 social invitation per week to focus on your discipline. Month 3. Implement a daily solitude practice, even 30 minutes. Month 4. Start choosing solitary work over social events when they conflict. Month 6. Be comfortable spending entire weekends alone without feeling isolated. This gradual exposure builds psychological resilience. Takeda Shingen made a critical distinction. He separated lonely idleness from productive solitude. Lonely idleness, sitting alone doing nothing, feeling isolated, wishing for company. Productive solitude, being alone with clear purpose, working on meaningful tasks, making progress. Shingen never allowed himself lonely idleness. Every hour of solitude was structured with purpose. His morning solitude, strategic planning. His evening solitude, studying military texts. His solo meals, mental review of the day's decisions. There was never a moment where he was alone and directionless. Why does this matter? Because loneliness is unbearable when it feels like deprivation. Loneliness is tolerable when it feels like focused work. Modern application: never be alone without purpose. If you're going to spend the weekend alone, have a clear project, not, "I'm alone because nobody invited me anywhere." Instead, "I'm spending Saturday alone to complete this specific project." The feeling is completely different, even though the physical situation is identical. In his late 20s, Takeda Shingen faced enormous social pressure from other clan leaders who thought his lifestyle was unhealthy and damaging his political relationships. One clan leader, a man named Imagawa Yoshimoto, directly confronted him. "Your isolation makes you seem cold and unapproachable. You're damaging your ability to form alliances." Shingen's response, preserved in a letter: "I am not isolated from people. I am isolated from distraction. There is a difference." This reframe was crucial. He stopped seeing his solitude as social failure and started seeing it as strategic focus. Modern application: when people criticize your discipline-induced loneliness, reframe it mentally, not, "I'm lonely because something is wrong with me." Instead, "I'm alone because I'm focused on things most people don't prioritize," not, "I'm isolated because I'm antisocial." Instead, "I'm selective because my time and energy are limited resources," not, "I'm missing out on social experiences." Instead, I'm investing in capabilities that will create different experiences later. These reframes don't change your external situation, but they completely change your internal experience of it. Here's the brutal reality. Your brain will fight your discipline-induced loneliness with everything it has. Not because you're weak, because you're human, and humans evolved to fear social isolation more than almost anything else. For 200,000 years, exile from the tribe meant death. Your ancestors who tolerated loneliness well died alone in the wilderness. Your ancestors who desperately sought group belonging survived to pass on their genes. You are descended from people who couldn't tolerate prolonged loneliness. It's in your DNA to panic when socially isolated. Takeda Shingen felt this biological pressure constantly. Let me show you the 3 specific obstacles he faced and how he overcame them. In his mid-20s, Shingen experienced what his writings describe as mayoi, profound doubt. He wrote, "I watch other leaders surrounded by advisors, friends, allies who genuinely enjoy their company. I sit alone in my strategy room. Have I chosen wrong? Will I reach the end of my life and realize I sacrificed connection for victories that don't matter?" This is the doubt spiral, the questioning of whether your discipline is worth the social cost. Your brain generates this doubt specifically to make you return to the safety of the group. Shingen's solution: he made a rule. He allowed himself to experience doubt, but never to act on doubt. I will feel doubt, but I will not change my path based on feeling doubt, only based on evidence that my path is producing the wrong results. His path was producing victories. Therefore, doubt was just noise. Shingen watched other clan leaders who were more socially integrated, more liked, more popular, and he envied them. One leader in particular, Imagawa Yoshimoto, was known for his social skills. People loved him. He had dozens of close friends. His court was famous for its warmth and camaraderie. Shingen admitted in private writings that he envied this. But then, in 1560, Imagawa Yoshimoto was defeated and killed by a much smaller force under Oda Nobunaga. His army collapsed because his officers were loyal to him personally, but not disciplined as warriors. Shingen wrote after learning of Yoshimoto's death, "He was loved. I am respected. He had friends. I have victories. He is dead. I am alive. The comparison is resolved." Harsh, but accurate. There were moments, Shingen admitted this openly, when the loneliness became unbearable. After Yamamoto Kansuke's death in 1561, Shingen experienced what he called kokoro no kuhaku, emptiness of spirit. He had lost his only close friend. He was alone in a way he had never been before. His solution: he gave himself permission to feel it fully for 3 days, then forced himself back to routine, not suppression, acknowledgement, then return to discipline. Modern application: you will have loneliness emergencies, moments where the isolation feels crushing. Give yourself permission to feel it, fully, for a defined period, then return to your discipline, not forever, not as a permanent state, but as a passing storm that you acknowledge and survive. Let me bring this back to where we started. That 16-year-old boy, Takeda Shingen, who chose discipline over companionship, who exiled his father and spent the next 5 years almost completely alone. By age 40, he controlled 5 provinces. He commanded the most feared army in Japan. He had wealth, power, and respect, but he still ate most of his meals alone. He still made decisions in solitude. He still spent his mornings in isolated reflection. The loneliness never fully went away, but something else happened that nobody tells you about. The loneliness stopped mattering, not because he became numb to it, but because the freedom his discipline created became more valuable than the connection he had sacrificed. By his 40s, Takeda Shingen had the freedom to make decisions without consensus, pursue strategies others considered impossible, live according to standards he set, not standards society imposed, build something that would outlast him. That freedom, the freedom to live according to your own design rather than others' expectations, only comes after you've survived the loneliness. You can't have both simultaneously. You can't have complete social integration and complete freedom of action. The paths diverge. Most people choose connection. They stay comfortable within group norms. They sacrifice their potential to maintain belonging. A few choose discipline. They endure years of loneliness. They become incomprehensible to their peers. They sacrifice belonging to develop capability. And after years of that sacrifice, they reach a state where they no longer need permission, validation, or approval from anyone. They are free, not free from loneliness that never completely disappears, free to act, to choose, to build, to become. Here's what you need to understand. If you're disciplined and you're lonely, you're not doing something wrong. You're doing something that most people can't sustain. The loneliness is confirmation that you're operating at a level above social norms. It's proof, not punishment. And if you can survive it, if you can build tolerance for it, make it intentional, reframe it as focused solitude instead of isolation, you'll eventually reach the other side, where the loneliness is still there, but it doesn't control you anymore, where you've built something real that wouldn't exist if you'd chosen connection over discipline, where you're free in a way that people who stayed comfortable will never understand. Takeda Shingen died at age 53 from illness. His final words, recorded by his attendants, "My life was not long, but it was mine." Not, "I wish I had been more social," not, "I regret my isolation." My life was mine. That's the freedom that comes after loneliness. If this video showed you why loneliness is part of the path, not a deviation from it, subscribe and turn on notifications. And tell me in the comments, are you experiencing this loneliness right now? How are you handling it? Remember, discipline makes you lonely before it makes you free. But it does make you free. You just have to survive the lonely part first. If you've made it this far, thank you. Now, go be lonely for something worth being lonely for. I'll see you in the next one.